Hello, Golf Plus community. Topher James here for another course walkthrough. And tomorrow, Thursday, we are going to tee off at Valhalla, which is going to be interesting because we get to play at Valhalla, and then in a couple weeks, whenever the PGA Championship is, we're coming back to Valhalla. So, yay! No, I actually like this course, so I'm excited. So we're going to do a walkthrough. Hole one. I guess some things to talk about with the course is it's really to try to set yourself up well on the greens. I think the back nine is more challenging than the front. There's definitely some holes where you have to be accurate, but overall, just do well on the greens. Par 72, four par fives, definitely some advantages. But as we get into hole one is a par four dogleg left, and from the tee, from the back tees, you'll see the trees over here. I purposely always aim with a little bit of a fade, and I can put myself, because you can see with the 300 yards, it'll put you past the elbow. And once you get into that area, obviously anything left could be trouble. So hitting the fairway, miss right, get in the rough, that would be the best spots. And then that will leave you pretty much about 100 to 130 yards to the green, depending on where you're going. Now, the green itself, I can't really remember these pins either. Easy, hard, or there's a pin here, there's a pin here, and I think there's a pin here. Um, so really depending on where the hole is, if it's in the front, go at it. I try to go at it with a draw. So if I miss it, I'll miss it left. Being in the sand isn't too bad as long as you're not playing towards the long pin. But pretty routine. I think the first hole is definitely a good way to start the round, since you're hitting a wedge or a low iron into the green. It's the best time to really be aggressive. I think the front nine is time to try to score well and just try to survive the back nine. But as you can see, the green has a lot of contours. There's a middle ridge from back to front. There's this little mound over here. There's a lot of different contours that you have to be aware of. But definitely be aggressive. You know, if you have a good up and down game, you should get par. If you move on to hole two, the first par five, the fairway's pretty skinny. So you don't have too much area. If you're a short hitter like me, you can actually hit towards the sand and not get in it. But if you are a long hitter, you definitely want to be as accurate as possible. When you hit into the fairway, you can definitely end up in the rough here many times, or even if you hit in the sand. The great thing about this par five is if you get into 300 yards, you can actually have about a 3 or 4 iron, depending on the environment with the wind and things like that. But either way, the green itself can be challenging, especially for a reachable par five. If you feel like if you don't feel confident in your shots, just aim right and get into the landing zone. There's a pin here. There's a pin. I want to say there's a pin back here, and then there's a pin here. I can't remember. Um, so if you're not confident, go off to the right. If the pin is on the left, then don't feel bad for going long, because I think that's a pretty fair up and down. Getting caught in the bunkers here can definitely be stressful because you're hitting uphill. There's so many contours to roll out. So it's definitely situational, but just trying to make sure that you take a time and really assess your second shot. This is a very birdieable hole. If you get eagle, that's a great job. If you get par, that sucks, but at least try to play your second shot, safely. This is one of the two long par threes. It can be anywhere from 200 yards. From the back pins, it's 180 to, I don't know, about 215 deep. So as long as there's no wind, hi tree. As long as there's no wind, it's not too big of a deal. Some of the issues right here, there's a pin here, there's a pin here, and there's a pin back here. I believe that's the hard pin. I think it's better to be long than short. If you're long, you can at least ride up the hill a little bit and you can put yourself in a good position at either pin. If you miss left, only miss left if the pin is left. Only miss right if the pin is right. Try to stay out of this bunker uh, at all possible, because again, you're hitting uphill and the green is going away from you. So that's just very tough up and down shot. Um, yeah, so I think if you can, be long and then just try to miss the green on the side of what the pin is. So par is definitely a good score on this one. And you get to hole 4, which is a short par 4. This is situational. Now, from medium tees, you'll definitely be able to go at the green. From the back tees, though, it just depends on what you want to do. So a lot of times I will lay up my 3-wood right of the sand bunker, giving me a gap wedge or a pitching wedge to the green. The only problem is, even sometimes if I lay up, I can end up in this bunker or with a weird stance on the rough because there's not too much area. Now, if you do go for the green or the full 300 yards, that will put you in the rough or through the fairway about 40 or 50 yards. So if you're confident in that shot, then definitely go for it. If you go for the 40 to 50 yard shot for your second shot, you are going to hit uphill, so it is going to be hard to control it. The easy pins here, I want to say medium pins over here, and then there's another pin over here. So all of it's back to front. So unless you're hitting a lob wedge out of the rough, a lot of times I will hit a full gap wedge or a pitching wedge, and I have to play the slope. So it's definitely, you would think that it should be an easy scoring hole, but you still have to respect it because it could, make you get a par or a bogey. So definitely be careful with that. But otherwise, not too hard of a hole. You get to hole 5 once you learn how to click on it. And this is a longer par 4. It's a narrow fairway with sand protecting it on each side. If you go right, you can actually, most of the time, fly it, unless there's like a headwind or anything like that, but you can fly the sand. So a good miss to the right, if possible. So, anything over here is good. Anything over here is good. It'll leave you anywhere from about 140 to 160, depending on where the pin is. Now, this green is very challenging because a lot of it is back to front, and even this pin location has that little horseshoe right here. So I want to say, I know there's a pin here, there's a pin way back there, and I want to say there's a pin over here too. Normally, I'm really aggressive on this green because I'm pretty confident with my 8 or 7 iron, depending on the hole. Um, but it's pretty big green. The only challenge will be the hard pin back here. I always try to be longer, if shorter, longer rather than shorter, just to give me a good up and down because this is such a little small portion of the green. It's not a guarantee green regulation. So even if you hit longer to the right, you can still get a good up and down. If anything, I always try to do right of this pin because it will go uphill. A lot of things, I try to do in general, but especially on this course, is to always leave me an uphill shot and not a downhill or a sidewinder. So, not too bad of a hole. If you get birdie, well done. Unlike everyone's favorite hole 6, which is just a difficult par 4, because you really can't do a full driver unless there's a strong headwind. Back end medium tees, will require you to lay up into the fairway. And once you lay up, you're still looking at anywhere from a 210 to 230 yard second shot. So if you go too far right, there's a chance that you would end up in the water, or you could end up in the water. If you go too far left, you're going to basically leave yourself a 240 yard shot into this par 4. So preferably, I try to fade a 3-wood onto the right side to give myself about, 220. But then when you get to the green for your second shot, because you're still looking at about 200, anything left obviously is bad because you're in the bunker and it's uphill. Anything right is a good bailout area, but there's a pin here, pin over here somewhere, and then a pin over here. Again, just try to miss where the pin is. If the pin is on the left, Try to miss right and long. If the pin is center or in the right, just it doesn't matter if you're short or long, just miss it right and give yourself a decent chip. But on your third shot, whether it be a chip or a pitch or a putt or whatever, just take a second to really respect the green because there's so much, this side of the green floats off to the right or left, that floats off to the right, that floats off to the front. It's just a very challenging hole, and people who play this know that if you get par on this hole, and then you did well. But then after a nasty par 4, you get a par 5. So this is a split fairway. It almost reminds me of Wii Golf. Has that one hole, or actually any Nintendo Golf has that little patch on the left. If you go off to the right, where it's definitely safe, it will give you about 270, anywhere from like 260 to 280. But if you go left, then that shaves off almost 30 to 40 yards off your second shot. So if you look at it, you have all that space on the right to hit your first shot. So if you're not hitting the driver well, definitely go for that. And you can make this, you can still make birdie on a 3-shot par 5. Totally lost my train of thought. But then if you go to the little patch of fairway, I always go in this direction unless it's from the medium tees. But I always go here because even if I end up in the rough, then I can bail out to the right and still pitch it and get up and down. Whereas if you're over here, then you can still bail out right with the driver or even a long 3-wood. So it's whatever you're comfortable with. So definitely don't get too greedy. So there's pin here, pin back there. Anything right is good. Anything in the sand except on that last pin location is good. You notice the green has a lot of contours right here that will bring it from back to front. The left side, far side pushes it left, the right side pushes right. So a lot of times my bailout area will always be long, and I will just chip downhill, and get up and down for birdie, hopefully. Par 3. All right, so the par 3 is downhill just a hair. So if it's the back tees, the green is from like 160 deep to about 185. I want to say, if you hit high like me, then you don't really have to club down because there's such a drop in the shot. If you do hit low, then definitely club down, or at least make sure you know where you want to miss. The missing part of this green is a little challenging. So there's pin here, and a pin over here. Anything short in this bunker is very difficult because you're going to have about a 15 to 20 yard uphill bunker shot. Anything off the green to the sides isn't too bad as long as it's near the hole. Anything long isn't too bad. So there's nothing wrong with just hitting it on the green and 2-putt for par. The par 3s on this course is not easy. So if you birdie a par 3, great job. But if you par it, then I wouldn't be mad. We get to hole 9, which is the par 4 going back to the clubhouse. And, pretty much you just want to be accurate off the tee. And here, I'm confident with my driver to usually put myself in a good shot because 300 yards into the fairway is still, 100, 120. So even if you end up in the rough or the bunker, it's not that big of an issue. But if you, decide to lay up with a 3-wood where there's a bigger landing area, you'll still have about 140, 100 high tree. All the trees are showing me love today. Oh, if you lay up on the drive, you'll still have about 100, 140, 150. It is severely uphill, so you do want to club up. And you want to pay attention to your pin locations. Now, the easiest pin will be the easiest, especially if you have the wedge, because you actually have. Can I zoom in? Oh, okay. You actually have this contour hill right here. Right is a little bit better, depending on how much spin you get on your wedge. I get a lot of spin, so I'll actually aim to the right and kind of coast it to the left. If we don't have much spin, then fly along into this hill. And my biggest concern will just always wanting to roll it off into the false front with too much spin. Medium pin is back here in this area. You can definitely be aggressive with that. Maybe a little more left if you can. So it will, run back down right. Where if you go back, like if you have too much spin, there's a chance that you could roll to the front or even roll off the green. So still be aggressive. And then the hard pin, which is back here. So both of these, actually all of them, you want to make sure you fly all of them. Or if you have a lower shot, just try to play your distance correctly. But definitely a good opportunity to get birdie. Excuse me. And then if you do get birdie, why does it keep on doing that? And then if you do get birdie, you then have another par 5 with a good birdie opportunity. Very long, almost 600 yards. Biggest challenge on this hole is to hit down the fairway. And hopefully if you get it to the fairway, you can definitely have the green light to go to this green. If you pull it too far left, you have the trees to deal with. If you push it too far right, you'll put the bunker into play. But if you are able to get your drive into the fairway, then there's a pin here. There's a pin right on this slope, probably the most dangerous, and then there's a pin on this area. But the thing to know is this slope right here. Now, so if you hit a 300-yard drive, and then that puts that slope probably about 250, 260. So what I'll actually do is I will draw a low 3-wood, which I know I can get some roll on it about 260. And preferably I try to just run it on this hill and let it go down. Now, other than the bunker, there's nothing too wrong with being off the green, whether it be left, long, or right, as long as you're close to the hole location. You can still get up and down for birdie. If you're in the bunker, just make sure that it's close to the pin as possible, but you're still going to be 15, 20 yards out, which is definitely kind of that line where I worry at least. So really good birdie opportunity. We get to another part. I must be turning. We get to another par 3. Now, this par 3 is definitely challenging. From the back tees, you got about 185 to the front, 220 to the back. It's downhill just a hair. But if you notice, the green, it's kind of a shallow green. So there's one pin right here, there's one pin right here, and then there's a pin back here. It's protected by the sand, and then it's also has a drop off on the left, on the far left. So again, for me, I'm thinking anything right and maybe a little long is a good miss shot. It is a longer iron, 3, 4, 5 iron, maybe 6, depending on the situation. Anything on this side with this pin, keep it on the right side. If the pin's here or there, anything long or anything on this side is a good opportunity. You want to just get up and down for par. What hole am I on? 12. This hole, it really messes with me mentally because there's just so many different options. So the fairway split has a downhill rough patch right here, and if I do a high cut driver, then I can keep the ball in here. But 300 yards is going to put you in the rough range. If you are a longer hitter, I mean, obviously you can lay up, but then you would still have about 200 yards to the green. If you are a longer hitter and you can, put the trees out of the equation, you can get some roll down the rough and still leave yourself, 130, 140 yards from the rough, which isn't too bad. That's a pretty quality shot. I think the biggest challenge for me is going to be the medium pins or just being able to get to this fairway right here because it's downhill. It's definitely a close shot within 100 yards. But just sticking on this fairway because it's right to left and it's small, that's going to be a challenge. And you don't want to get near the trees on this hole. The green itself, there's a pin here. I want to say there's a pin back here somewhere, and I know there's a pin over here. Anything far and left is safe. So if you put yourself in a uncomfortable position, just hit it long or left. Sand bunker, not fun at all because again, I'm starting to see a pattern where a lot of these bunkers you have to hit uphill. Um, and then the green, I mean, you can see right here that most of it flows from the back to the front, and then the back part flows off to the right. So just getting the ball on the green. If you get lucky and can make a birdie, that's great. If you just get a par, then move on. Hole 13 is another, possible layup off the drive, depending on how aggressive you want to get. So if you want to get to the green, it's 340 yards and it's downhill by 50 feet. So if you have a huge backwind on this and you feel very confident in your accuracy, you can definitely go for the green. But a lot of times, I mean, I've even seen some people drive it off to the thick rough to the left to give them a little chip. But most of the time, you just want to lay up with a fairway wood. And you have a large landing area. It does make a huge difference. So if you put on the left side, you'll have about 70 to 80 yards. Put on the right side, you'll have about 100. So I take that into account because I usually like 90 to 100. Anything in the rough or the bunker, not too bad because you're still, 100 yards out, give or take. The green itself, so as you can see, if you're going to drive it, it's plateaued and there's runoff on all of it. If you look over here, even if you drive it in this area, you could still give yourself a 30 to 40 yard shot. Just remember that's deep rough, so you'll definitely want to hit it a little bit harder than usual. There's one pin over here, one pin over here, I think one pin over here somewhere. Um, so there's definitely opportunities to hit a good wedge shot in and get up and down for birdie. But the green itself is still, you still have to be cautious. You still don't want to shank it into the water. So good luck. If you get birdie, great job. Hole 14, the last par 3 on the course. Probably the best scoring opportunity of all of them. And the reason why I say that is from the back tees, you have a difference of about 190 to 220. Now, the green, so we have some thoughts. So there's a pin here, and a pin here. This pin right here might be the best bet for birdie. I want to say that's medium pins because if you hit your long iron onto this part of the green and you run it up the slope and you have a little bit of slope here, it's a good way to just kind of run it up and bring it back down, even though you'll still have a nasty downhill putt. Um, you know, it's going to be hard to stick it close and give yourself any opportunities on any of these pin locations. Hitting high left, trying to stay away from hitting uphill sand shots. If you end up in rough, that ain't too bad. I mean, there's plenty of times that I've ended up right here. Like I said, these par threes, you want to be defensive. You don't want to give a bogey away just for being aggressive and not knowing how to save yourself from getting a bogey. But yeah, it just depends on how aggressive and the wind and all that fun stuff. Hole 15 is a par 4. So my friends basically call this gauntlet, and I want to say it starts with that par 3. So hole 14, 15, 16, and then 17 is the gauntlet, quote unquote. So this par 4, it's not too bad. It's 440 yards, from the back tees, easy pins. Gives you about a low iron to a wedge to get to the green. The challenging part will be the fairway. So you have a tight little area between the trees, and then as you get closer, you can tell that this fairway kind of gets cut off over here. So if you get left, you would think that the ball will bounce right, but it won't. And then if you go too far right in the trees, you can possibly land in the water. So just trying to give yourself a good tee shot. If you're playing from medium tees, you do put this water into play. And then we get to the green. So easy pin, medium pin. I want to say hard pin is over here. So easy pin, if If you have a chance at it, get very aggressive because even if you miss, I mean, you would have to miss pretty bad to put yourself in any danger. But definitely be aggressive. I love this pin right here because I can fly it and spin it back. This pin over here is usually the one that makes me a little nervous, is because I play a draw on my short irons and wedges, so I put that water into play. So there's many times that I've ended up in this rough. But other than that, it as long as you have a good tee shot and a good second shot, it isn't too bad of a hole. Hole 16, however, is probably the second hardest hole on the course, except for that one par four on the front nine. It's very long. So 300 yards still puts you about 200 yards out. Plus, as you can see, it is kind of a dogleg to the right, so you don't have much room to miss the fairway. If you hit it to the left, you'll end up in the rough for a very long second shot. If you hit the trees, then you'll actually, hello tree, you can put this water into play. So by all means, you definitely want to miss left, but you want to hit the fairway. It's a decent size, and because of the how long it is, I mean, you're talking about. I mean, I can't really tell, um, but because it's a long hole, you'll definitely want to give yourself a decent second shot. And no matter what, missing long again is always good. If you end up in the sand, it's uphill. There's a pin here. There's a pin back here, I want to say. And then the hard pin, which is like the worst, is right here. Because even if if you're chipping from the side, there's a chance you can roll past it. So that's just a horrible pin. But missing long, being accurate, just trying to give yourself a good opportunity. Par is really good. Birdie is, great. Bogey, if it happens, it happens. Hole 17, last hole in quote unquote gauntlet. This one, I think is a good opportunity for a birdie hole as long as you get a good tee shot. The landing zone for the tee isn't too big. So you basically get this area right here. If you do play on the medium pins, which we will, aim left over the sand, and that will put you in the fairway. But from the back pins, just try to do your best to get on the fairway. And then once you do have your second shot to the green, so there's a pin here, there's a pin over here somewhere, and then there's a pin back here. But you have all this space in the back and to the right, to be able to get up and down. If the pin was over here, then I've missed right so many times on this, and then this is just a good landing area. Sand, very difficult, again uphill. But if you're feeling confident, definitely chase after a low score on this hole. And then lastly, hole 18, the par 5 going uphill. Yeah, what can I say? It's a pretty nasty tee off because you have water on your right, you have sand on your left, and it's a par 5, and so you're already like, oh yeah, I can get eagle. But definitely respect the drive. So the 300 yard is gonna put you parallel with the sand, so you're gonna have an area about right here. Um, depending on how you've been hitting your drive, if you've been drawing it, if you've been fading it, just play it and trust it. Um, you know, and worst case scenario, if you lay up short of the sand, with the 260, you could actually probably go three wood, or you could even go three wood driver on this if you really want to be safe, which honestly isn't that bad of an idea. But once you get to the green, you're either going to have a long iron or a wood into the green for your second shot. So this green, this little boomerang looking thing, so easy pin, medium pin, hard pin. Easy pin, if you hit it in good drive, it can leave you about like 210, but it's still uphill. It's going to be about 20 feet uphill. You have plenty of areas to miss it along and left. This sand bunker is just a no. It's ridiculously hard because you're uphill. This sand bunker on this hole is not bad at all. But you can still hit it long. You can still hit it left. Just like the medium pin over here. I want to say it's like right here. So you can still hit it long and run it up the hill a little bit. You can still hit it long, hit it right. And anything up here on your second shot will give you an opportunity for a chip and eagle or an up and down birdie. But the hard pin itself, I mean, you're gonna have about 230, 240, and it's almost just be better, you know, fly the green, take this out of play. And if you stick it on the green, which is pretty difficult because it is plateaued, um, that's a great shot. But if you run off, or even if you end up on a left or right side, you can putt it. I wouldn't. I would chip it, but just above all, just don't be in this bunker. And then hopefully you do well. Like I said, we'll have a crack at it starting tomorrow. And then the PGA Championship will be here. I don't know what the settings are. I just know what the course looks like. But hopefully you do well, and if you do exceptionally well or better than you think, leave a comment because I like to see how people are doing. But I will see you next week for the next course. Until then, have a good day.